My brother insisted that my tattoo of my dog was shameful. When I found out why he thought that, I called the police. At family dinner, I rolled up my sleeve to show everyone my new ink. Look what I got! It's Ambipom's paw print. My dog Ambipom has extra toes on each paw. This rare thing called polydactyl that makes his paws look really cool. My mom leaned in to look. Oh, honey, that's so cute. My brother-in-law Adam's face changed completely. He put down his fork. You got a tattoo making fun of a limb difference? That's disgusting. I laughed because I thought he had to be joking. What? It's just Ambipom's paw. Adam shook his head. You're mocking disabled people. You should be ashamed of yourself. My sister jumped in. Adam's right. Someone with a limb difference could see that and be really hurt. I looked around the table for support, but my parents just looked down at their plates. It's my dog, I said, my voice getting shaky. He was born with extra toes. I think it's special. Adam crossed his arms. You're treating a disability like it's cute. How do you think a person with a limb difference would feel seeing that on your arm? The whole dinner went silent and awkward. I felt my face getting hot. 2 days later, my mom called. Adam wants to have a family meeting. Can you come over tonight? When I walked into my parents' living room, everyone was already sitting down looking serious. Adam had a whole stack of printed papers in front of him. Thanks for coming, he said, like he was leading a business presentation. I think we need to talk about what happened at dinner. For the next 30 minutes, he read from articles about ableism and disability rights. He showed statistics. He had notes. My sister kept nodding and saying things like, exactly, and this is so important. My parents just sat there. Finally, Adam looked at me. Do you understand why what you did was wrong? I was looking at him like he had 5 heads. It's a tattoo of my dog. Do you need a brain scan or something? Adam looked at me like I'd just insulted his mother. What I need is for you to take accountability for your actions. He handed me his phone. This is a disability rights charity. You should donate to show you're serious about learning from this. I stared at him with a grin. I couldn't help but laugh. I'm serious. You must donate right now. You want me to donate for getting a tattoo of my dog? I pressed the phone into his chest and started getting up. No, you must donate. He waved the phone in my face. You want me to donate? Okay, fine. I took the phone out of his hand and donated exactly 1 cent. There, I did it. I pushed past him and walked out. I didn't think about it again for weeks. Then one night I was on Instagram scrolling through a disabled influencer's page when I saw a comment from Adam's account. You're so hot. I love your prosthetic. I can't stop thinking about what we could do together. I felt kind of weirded out, so I clicked on his profile and went through it. Turns out every single person he followed was a disabled woman. I went through his account and saw that he left hundreds of comments per day on these women's accounts. They were all graphic, disgusting comments, telling these women his darkest thoughts about their limitations. I messaged one of the random women he followed. Has this guy ever harassed you? She wrote back fast. Oh my god, yes. He sent me the creepiest messages. I had to block him. She sent me screenshots. Something about his page made me look into that charity he pressed me to donate to. The website looked real at first, but it wasn't registered anywhere as a nonprofit. I found the domain registration. Adam had created it himself 6 months ago. I called the police and showed them everything. A week later, I invited everyone to dinner at my parents' house. I have something I want to share with the family, I told my mom. Adam showed up looking smug. We were halfway through eating when someone knocked on the door. 2 police officers walked in. We're looking for Adam Hendricks, one of them said. Adam's fork clattered onto his plate. What's going on? The officer stepped forward. We're investigating fraud related to a charity website registered in your name. It's collected over $30,000. My mom gasped. 30,000? Adam stood up. This is a misunderstanding. I pulled out my phone. Should I tell them about the misunderstanding, Adam? Or should I just read your Instagram comments out loud? His face went white. This is all because of her stupid tattoo, he yelled, pointing at me. I stood up and looked him right in the eyes. No, this is because you're a lying creep who stole from people and harassed women while pretending to care about them. They walked him out in handcuffs while my whole family sat frozen. But 2 weeks after that, one of the women from his Instagram sent me a message. There's something else you need to know about Adam. Something much worse than the charity. I stared at my phone screen and saw proof that he was about to go free. I clicked on the attachment and started reading through the legal documents Sage sent. The first page was a motion filed by Adam's defense attorney. My hands started shaking as I got to the part about the warrant. The police had access to Adam's Instagram account without getting proper legal permission first. They just went in and grabbed everything because I showed them his comments. The defense attorney argued that all the Instagram evidence should be thrown out because of this procedural error. I scrolled through page after page of legal language, but the main point was clear. If the judge agreed with Adam's lawyer, most of the harassment evidence would disappear from the case. I grabbed my phone and called Detective Carter right away. He picked up on the second ring, and I could hear the frustration in his voice before he even said hello. He told me he'd just found out about the motion that morning. The defense attorney filed it late Friday, and the prosecutor's office was scrambling to respond. Detective Carter explained that one of the officers on the case made a mistake during the initial investigation. They thought they could access the Instagram account based on my screenshots and the victim's complaints, but they needed an actual warrant first. He kept apologizing, saying this could unravel the entire harassment case against Adam. The fraud charges would probably stick because that evidence came from financial records and domain registration, which they got through proper channels. But the pattern of harassment, the predatory behavior, all of that might get suppressed. I hung up and immediately opened Instagram to message Sage. I sent her a quick explanation of what Detective Carter said, and within seconds she responded. She added me to a group chat with 3 other women Adam had harassed. For the next 2 hours, we all messaged back and forth in a panic. One woman named Maya kept saying she couldn't believe this was happening. Another woman, Rachel, said she felt sick thinking about Adam walking free. We went through every possible scenario. The fraud charges might get him some jail time, but without the harassment evidence, the judge wouldn't see the full picture of what Adam really did. The predatory pattern, the way he targeted disabled women specifically, all of that context could just disappear from the legal record. Sage pointed out that even if he got convicted of fraud, he wouldn't have to register as a sex offender. He could serve a short sentence and then go right back to doing what he was doing before. My phone rang around 6 that evening and I saw Scarlett's name on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Her voice was shaking, so bad I could barely understand her at first. She asked if it was true that most of the charges against Adam might get dropped. I told her what Detective Carter had explained about the warrant problem. There was this long silence on the other end of the line. Then Scarlett started talking really fast about how she didn't know what to do. She said she was starting to see who Adam really was, but she was still married to him and terrified about what this meant for her life. I could hear her crying. She asked if I thought he might actually get away with everything. I didn't know what to tell her. The next morning, Sage sent me contact information for an attorney named Brooklyn Hassan, who specializes in online harassment cases. I called Brooklyn's office and somehow got an appointment for that same afternoon. Her office was in this old building downtown with creaky floors. Brooklyn was younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. She had me sit down and went through everything I brought. All the screenshots, the messages from victims, the timeline of events. She spread papers across her desk and made notes on a yellow legal pad. After about an hour, she looked up and explained that even if the criminal charges got reduced, we still had options. Civil court worked differently than criminal court. We could file restraining orders based on evidence we collected ourselves. We could pursue public accountability measures that didn't rely on the suppressed Instagram evidence. Brooklyn pulled up some case files on her computer and showed me examples of similar situations where civil action worked when criminal cases fell apart. She explained that the fake charity fraud case was solid because that evidence was collected properly through financial records and domain registration. Adam would definitely face consequences for stealing $30,000 from people. But the harassment pattern that showed how dangerous he really was might not be part of the official record. The criminal case would probably just show him as a guy who ran a fake charity, not as a predator who targeted vulnerable women. Over the next week, I coordinated with all 5 victims Adam had harassed. We created a shared document and started compiling our own evidence package that didn't rely on the Instagram warrant at all. Sage had screenshots she took herself before ever reporting anything to police. Maya had saved messages Adam sent her through Facebook Messenger. Rachel had emails he sent to her personal account. Another victim named Lisa had text messages from a burner phone number we could trace back to Adam. We gathered everything we documented independently before police ever got involved. Each of us went through our phones and computers, pulling every piece of evidence we'd saved. Detective Carter called me on Thursday afternoon. His voice was flat when he told me the judge had ruled to suppress the Instagram evidence. The harassment charges were being dropped completely. The prosecutor was moving forward only with the fraud charges. Adam's lawyer was already negotiating for a plea deal that would give him minimal jail time, and definitely no sex offender registration. Detective Carter said the prosecutor was talking about maybe 18 months with possibility of parole after 9. I felt like I was going to throw up. I sat down on my kitchen floor and just stared at the wall. Adam was going to serve less than a year for stealing $30,000, and then walk away with his reputation mostly intact. All the women he harassed, the predatory pattern he showed, the way he manipulated disability activism to target vulnerable people, all of that was going to disappear from the legal record like it never happened. The fraud conviction would be on his record, but to anyone checking his background, he just looked like a guy who made some bad financial decisions. Not a predator. Not dangerous. That weekend, Sage organized a video call with all the victims and Brooklyn. We all logged on Saturday morning and spent 3 hours going through our options. Brooklyn explained that we could pursue civil harassment lawsuits against Adam individually. These cases didn't require the same evidence standards as criminal cases. They could proceed even while the criminal case was ongoing. We could each file our own lawsuit based on the evidence we'd collected ourselves. The burden of proof was lower in civil court. We didn't need to prove beyond reasonable doubt, just by preponderance of evidence. Brooklyn said we had a strong case because we had documentation, patterns of behavior, and multiple victims telling consistent stories. After a lot of discussion, we all agreed to move forward with civil lawsuits. It wasn't the justice we wanted, but it was something. It was a way to get the truth on record, even if the criminal system had failed us. 3 days after our video call, my mom texted asking if I could come over to talk. I drove to their house Tuesday evening and found both my parents sitting at the kitchen table looking uncomfortable. My dad cleared his throat twice before he started talking. He told me they were sorry for staying silent when Adam attacked me over the tattoo. He said they were scared of causing family drama and didn't want to pick sides between me and Scarlett. My mom reached across the table and put her hand on mine. She said they didn't understand how serious everything was until the police walked Adam out in handcuffs. My dad admitted they should have supported me from the beginning instead of acting like the tattoo thing was just a disagreement everyone needed to get over. Their apology felt real. I could see my mom had been crying before I got there, but I still felt angry sitting there listening to them. I told them I appreciated them saying this, but I needed time to process everything. My mom nodded and said she understood. I left after about 20 minutes because sitting there felt too heavy. 2 days later, someone knocked on my apartment door at 9 in the morning. I opened it and Scarlett was standing there looking terrible. Her hair was messy and she had dark circles under her eyes like she hadn't slept in a week. She asked if she could come in. I stepped aside and she walked past me into my living room. She sat down on my couch and pulled out her laptop. Her hands were shaking as she opened it. She told me she'd been going through Adam's computer trying to figure out their finances for the divorce. She found a folder buried in his files that was locked with a password. She spent 3 days trying different passwords until she got in. The folder had hundreds of screenshots of conversations with disabled women. It had spreadsheets tracking which women responded to which types of messages. It had a document where Adam wrote out his plans for escalating contact with specific targets. Scarlett's voice cracked when she told me there were also messages between Adam and 5 other men who shared tips about finding and approaching disabled women online. They had a whole group chat where they traded information and encouraged each other. I stared at the laptop screen feeling sick. Scarlett said she made copies of everything before Adam could access his computer remotely and delete it. She asked what we should do with this information. I grabbed my phone and called Brooklyn. We met at her office that afternoon with all the files Scarlett had copied. Brooklyn went through everything carefully, taking notes and asking questions. She explained this evidence was huge for our civil cases, even though it couldn't be used in the criminal case anymore. The locked files showed Adam had planned everything out ahead of time. They proved this wasn't just some guy making inappropriate comments. It was organized predatory behavior. The group chat with other men showed Adam was part of a network of people targeting vulnerable women. Brooklyn said this kind of evidence could convince a jury that Adam was genuinely dangerous, not just someone who made mistakes. She started making copies and organizing everything into our civil case files. I called Detective Carter from Brooklyn's office to tell him about the new evidence. He sounded frustrated when he heard the timing. He said it was too late to use this for the criminal harassment charges, since the judge already ruled to throw out the Instagram evidence. But he told me to bring him copies anyway because it could help with the fraud investigation, and it needed to be documented. I met him at the police station the next morning. He went through all the files Scarlett found, his jaw getting tighter as he read through Adam's planning documents. When he finished, he looked at me and said he believed Adam was dangerous. He said he wished the system had worked better to hold Adam accountable for everything he'd done. His voice had this angry edge to it, like he was as frustrated as we were about the legal technicalities letting Adam slip through. A week later, the prosecutor called to tell me they were offering Adam a plea deal. 18 months in jail with the possibility of getting out on parole after 9 months. He'd have to pay back the $30,000 he stole and do 5 years of probation. But there would be no sex offender registration, no official record of the harassment pattern, just fraud charges on his record like he'd stolen money and nothing else. I felt like screaming when I heard the terms. The prosecutor explained that with the harassment evidence thrown out, this was the best deal they could get. If they went to trial on just the fraud charges, Adam might get even less time. I said I understood, but I didn't really. I just felt defeated. The plea hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. I showed up at the courthouse with Sage and 2 other women Adam had harassed. The prosecutor told us we'd be allowed to give victim impact statements before the judge made his final decision on the sentence. I sat in the courtroom waiting for our turn to speak, watching Adam sit next to his lawyer looking calm. When the judge called me up, I walked to the front and read from the statement I'd written. I described how Adam used disability activism as a weapon to manipulate my whole family. I explained how he attacked me over an innocent tattoo of my dog, while secretly harassing vulnerable women online. I told the judge that fraud charges didn't capture what Adam really did, which was prey on disabled women while pretending to care about them. I said the community deserved to know Adam was dangerous, not just someone who made bad financial choices. Sage spoke next. She described what it felt like to be fetishized and harassed by someone who claimed to be an ally. She talked about the psychological damage of having someone target her disability as a sexual object, while using progressive language to make himself look good. She explained how Adam's behavior made her question every interaction she had in disability spaces, wondering if other people were secretly seeing her the same way Adam did. The judge listened carefully to both of us. He thanked us for speaking. Then he explained that his hands were tied by the evidence ruling about what charges he could actually consider for sentencing. He said he understood our concerns, but he could only sentence Adam based on the fraud conviction. Adam's lawyer stood up and said Adam accepted the plea deal. The judge sentenced him to 18 months in jail with eligibility for work release after 6 months. Adam's lawyer made a statement to the courtroom about how Adam was getting treatment for his issues and taking accountability for his actions. I wanted to stand up and yell that he was admitting almost nothing publicly. The fraud conviction would make him look like someone who ran a scam, not someone who systematically targeted and harassed women. 2 days after the sentencing, Brooklyn filed civil harassment lawsuits on behalf of 4 victims, including Sage. She explained these cases didn't need a criminal conviction to move forward. We could proceed based on all the evidence we'd collected ourselves, including the files Scarlett found on Adam's computer. The lawsuits asked for financial damages and permanent restraining orders to keep Adam away from his victims. 3 days after Adam's sentencing, Scarlett called to tell me she'd filed for divorce. She said she was moving back in with our parents while the divorce went through. She'd started seeing a therapist to help her process how completely Adam had manipulated her values and activism. She asked if we could get coffee sometime. I said maybe, but I wasn't ready yet. Our relationship felt weird and awkward, like we were strangers who used to know each other. But I could tell she was trying to make things right, even if I didn't know how to forgive her yet. The next morning, my cousin June sent me a message on Facebook. I hadn't talked to her in maybe 3 years since we both got busy with our lives and drifted apart. She wrote that she'd seen local news coverage about Adam's arrest and the fraud charges. She said she always thought Adam was weird and controlling whenever she saw him at family events. She told me she was proud of me for not backing down when he tried to make me feel bad about my tattoo. Her message made me feel better because it came from outside all the immediate family drama. She wasn't trying to keep the peace or protect anyone's feelings. She just said what she thought, and it felt real. I wrote back thanking her, and we agreed to get coffee soon. 2 days after that, a woman named Luna Mahoney emailed our group through the contact form on a website Sage had set up for victims. Luna said she was a victim advocate who worked specifically with people targeted by online predators in disability spaces. She explained that what Adam did wasn't unusual or rare. She said predators often hide behind progressive language and activism to get close to vulnerable people. She told us they use social justice words as weapons to silence anyone who questions them. Luna asked if we wanted to start a support network for other victims, because she'd seen this pattern dozens of times, and most people never got justice. We set up a video call with Luna, and she walked us through everything she'd learned from years of advocacy work. She showed us warning signs that predators display when they pretend to be allies. She explained how they isolate victims by making everyone else feel like the bad guy for questioning their behavior. She said the fake charity thing was classic because it let Adam collect money while looking like a good person. Luna told us she could help us create resources that other people could use to spot these patterns before things got worse. Over the next month, I spent hours every week working with Luna, Sage, and 2 other victims to build an online resource about predatory behavior disguised as activism. We documented specific warning signs without naming Adam directly to avoid legal problems. We wrote about people who use disability rights language to control others. We explained how fake allies often have extreme reactions when questioned about anything. We described patterns like demanding donations to unverified charities or following only one type of person on social media. We made sure every example was educational and focused on behavior patterns rather than attacking individuals. The website went live 3 weeks after we started working on it, and within days we got messages from people saying they recognized these patterns in their own communities. Then Adam's defense attorney filed a motion to dismiss our civil harassment cases. The motion argued that we were harassing Adam by pursuing multiple lawsuits at once. It claimed our cases were just retaliation for the criminal prosecution, and that we were trying to pile on because we were mad about the plea deal. The attorney said we had no independent standing to sue and were just trying to hurt his client. Brooklyn responded to the motion within 48 hours. She filed a response that laid out exactly how each victim had independent evidence and separate claims. She showed that Sage's case was based on harassment that happened before anyone else even knew what Adam was doing. She demonstrated that the other victims had their own documentation and their own damages. She proved that each case could stand alone without relying on the criminal prosecution. The judge scheduled a hearing for 2 weeks later, and Brooklyn said she wasn't worried because the motion was weak and desperate. At the hearing, the judge took about 10 minutes to deny the motion to dismiss. He said each victim clearly had their own case and their own evidence. Scarlett's deposition for our civil cases happened 3 days after that hearing. She sat in a conference room with Adam's attorney, Brooklyn, and a court reporter for almost 4 hours. Brooklyn sent me the transcript later, and reading it made me feel weird and sad. Scarlett described how Adam slowly isolated her from me after the tattoo incident. She explained how he convinced her that I was the problem, and that supporting him meant being a good ally to disabled people. She talked about how he used articles and statistics to make her feel stupid if she questioned anything. She said he made her believe that family harmony was less important than standing up for disability rights. She described how he got angry if she talked to me privately, or suggested maybe the tattoo thing wasn't that serious. The testimony showed that Adam had manipulated her systematically over months. He'd used progressive language as a weapon to control who she talked to and what she believed. Scarlett cried during parts of the deposition according to the transcript. She kept saying she should have seen it sooner and she was sorry for not protecting me. My parents called me that same week to talk about how guilty they felt. My mom's voice was shaky when she said they should have supported me during the tattoo confrontation instead of staying silent. My dad said they were scared of causing family conflict and didn't realize how serious Adam's manipulation was. They told me my mom started going to therapy with Scarlett to work through everything. They wanted to understand how they'd enabled Adam by always trying to keep peace instead of standing up for what was right. My mom said the therapist was helping them see how their silence had hurt me and made Adam think he could get away with anything. I told them I appreciated the apology, but I needed time to really trust them again. The discovery phase of our civil lawsuits kept revealing worse and worse information. Brooklyn got access to records from Adam's fake charity website that showed over 200 people had donated. Most of the donors were disabled individuals who trusted Adam's claims about supporting disability rights. Some people donated monthly thinking they were helping a real cause. The total amount was actually closer to $35,000 than the $30,000 the police originally found. Reading through the donor list made me feel sick, because these were exactly the people Adam claimed to care about. He'd stolen from the community he pretended to advocate for. Many donors had left comments on the website about how important the work was, or how glad they were to support disability activism. Adam had betrayed every single one of them. 3 months after his sentencing, Adam got approved for work release. His father had connections at a property management company and got Adam a job doing maintenance work. The terms meant Adam had to wear an ankle monitor at all times. He could leave jail for work during the day but had to return every night by 6. He wasn't supposed to go anywhere except work and back. The whole thing made me angry because he was back in public way sooner than any of us expected. Work release was supposed to be for people who were low risk and taking responsibility. Adam had done neither of those things, but somehow he still got approved. Sage spotted him at a coffee shop 2 weeks into his work release. She was meeting a friend when she saw Adam walk in wearing his work uniform. He looked right at her and smirked before turning away to order. Sage said her whole body went cold and she couldn't focus on her conversation after that. She filed a report with Adam's probation officer that same day. She explained that seeing him smirk at her felt like he was trying to intimidate her and remind her he was still around. The probation officer said they'd document the contact, but without Adam making explicit threats or violating the restraining order distance requirement, there wasn't much they could do. The officer told Sage to call immediately if Adam approached her or said anything directly. After Sage told our group about seeing Adam, we decided we needed to do more than just pursue our individual cases. Luna helped us organize a public awareness campaign about predatory behavior in disability activism spaces. We reached out to legitimate disability rights organizations and explained what had happened. Every single organization we contacted was horrified by Adam's actions. They wanted to help prevent similar situations and protect their communities. We partnered with 3 major disability advocacy groups to create educational materials and training programs. The campaign focused on teaching people how to recognize predators who use progressive language as cover, and how to respond when someone's activism seems performative or controlling. Within the next few weeks, Brooklyn started working on settlement talks with Adam's lawyer for 2 of the civil harassment cases. The negotiations dragged on through multiple phone calls and email exchanges. Adam's lawyer kept pushing for non-disparagement clauses that would stop us from talking about the cases publicly. Brooklyn pushed back hard on that part. She explained to me that we needed to protect our right to discuss the cases and advocacy work without getting sued later. After days of back and forth, they reached an agreement. Adam would pay damages and accept permanent restraining orders. The non-disparagement clauses got rewritten so we could still talk about the cases in educational settings and advocacy work. We just couldn't name Adam specifically in certain contexts. The 2 victims who settled got their money and their restraining orders. It felt like a partial win, but also incomplete because the settlements meant no public testimony about what Adam did to them. Sage called me after the settlements went through. She told me she and one other victim decided they wanted to take their cases to trial instead of settling. I asked her why she would risk getting less money, and she said it wasn't about the money anymore. She wanted to testify in open court about Adam's predatory pattern. She wanted it on public record exactly what he did and why it mattered. The other victim felt the same way. Brooklyn supported their decision completely and started preparing for civil trials. She warned them it would be harder and more stressful than settling, but she respected their choice. I felt proud of Sage for being willing to go through a trial just to make sure the truth came out. Brooklyn spent the next several weeks gathering evidence, preparing witness lists, and building the strongest possible case for trial. My mom called me one afternoon sounding uncomfortable. She said Adam's father had been trying to reach me through her and my dad. He wanted to set up a meeting where Adam could apologize to me directly. My mom said Adam's father seemed genuine and really wanted to help his son make things right. I felt my whole body tense up at the idea. I called Brooklyn immediately to ask what I should do. She told me in very clear terms not to meet with Adam. She explained that these apology meetings often become opportunities for manipulation, and that Adam could use anything I said against me later. She said real accountability happens through actions and following court orders, not through performative apologies. I called my parents back and told them I was declining the meeting. I explained that Adam could show accountability by complying with all his restraining orders, paying what he owed, and actually changing his behavior. My dad understood right away. My mom took a bit longer to accept it, but eventually she agreed to tell Adam's father no. 4 months after Adam's criminal sentencing, the first civil trial started. I sat in the courtroom gallery with the other victims who had settled. Sage walked to the witness stand looking nervous but determined. Brooklyn asked her to describe the harassment in her own words. Sage talked about how Adam's comments started seeming friendly, but quickly became graphic and sexual. She explained how he focused obsessively on her prosthetic leg and kept asking invasive questions about her limitations. She described the psychological impact of being targeted by someone who claimed to advocate for people like her. Her voice shook a few times, but she kept going. She told the jury about feeling unsafe in her own online spaces and having to block Adam on multiple platforms. She explained how his harassment made her question whether other activists were genuine or just predators in disguise. The jury listened carefully and took notes. Watching Sage testify made everything feel real in a way the criminal case never did, because this time the focus was completely on his predatory pattern. Adam's defense lawyer stood up for cross-examination, and his strategy became clear immediately. He argued that Adam's comments were awkward attempts at connection, not harassment. He said Adam had a documented disability fetish that he framed as a sexual orientation, rather than predatory behavior. He tried to make it sound like Adam was just expressing his authentic self, and couldn't help being attracted to disabled women. Brooklyn objected multiple times to this framing. During her redirect, she systematically tore apart the sexual orientation argument. She showed the jury messages where Adam escalated his harassment after women asked him to stop. She presented evidence of how he targeted multiple women with the same pattern of behavior. She demonstrated that Adam's actions showed predatory escalation, not innocent attraction. She walked the jury through timeline after timeline showing how Adam's behavior got worse and more aggressive when women set boundaries. By the end of her presentation, the defense's argument looked ridiculous. The jury went to deliberate and came back after 6 hours. They found Adam liable for harassment and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The damages came to $45,000. Sage started crying when she heard the amount. The judge issued a permanent restraining order requiring Adam to stay at least 500 feet away from Sage at all times. He couldn't contact her directly or indirectly through any means. If he violated the order, he would face immediate arrest. Sage hugged Brooklyn in the hallway after court ended. I hugged them both. The victory felt huge because a jury of regular people looked at all the evidence and agreed that what Adam did was wrong and harmful. The public record now showed his predatory pattern, even though the criminal case couldn't capture it fully. 2 weeks after Sage's trial, Detective Carter called me. He said Adam's probation officer had contacted him about a violation. Adam had been accessing social media from his work computer during his work release. The IT department at his job found search history and login attempts for multiple platforms. When they dug deeper, they discovered Adam had created new anonymous accounts. He was using these accounts to monitor his victims' social media posts. This violated the restraining orders from the civil settlements. Detective Carter sounded frustrated but also satisfied that Adam kept proving he couldn't control himself. The probation officer was filing violation paperwork immediately. The probation violation hearing happened fast. The judge reviewed the evidence of Adam accessing social media and creating anonymous monitoring accounts. Adam's lawyer tried to argue it was accidental or work-related, but the search history made that impossible to believe. The judge revoked Adam's work release completely. He ordered Adam to serve the remainder of his sentence in jail without eligibility for early release. The judge said he was clearly fed up with Adam's continued predatory behavior, despite supposedly taking accountability. He told Adam directly that every chance he got, he proved he couldn't be trusted in the community. Adam went back to full custody that same day. Watching him lose his work release privileges felt like justice finally working the way it should. The second civil trial started while Adam was back in jail full-time. This victim's case was similar to Sage's, but with different specific details of harassment. The jury heard testimony about Adam's pattern of fetishizing disabled women and harassing them across multiple platforms. Brooklyn presented the same strong evidence of predatory escalation. The jury awarded this victim $38,000 in damages and another permanent restraining order. Local media started covering both civil trials because they created public record of Adam's predatory pattern. News articles detailed his harassment tactics and the jury verdicts against him. The criminal case alone couldn't tell the full story, but these civil trials filled in all the gaps. Scarlett's divorce got finalized during the second trial. She called me the day the papers were signed. She got the house and most of the assets because Adam's criminal activity and civil judgments made him financially liable for everything. She told me she felt grateful the marriage never produced children. She said she was working hard in therapy to rebuild her understanding of healthy activism. She wanted to learn how to recognize manipulation disguised as progressive values. I told her I was proud of her for doing that work. Our relationship still felt awkward sometimes, but she was genuinely trying to make things right. She asked if we could have dinner soon, just the two of us. I said yes. Over the next few weeks, my parents started showing up differently. My mom called just to check in without asking me to forgive anyone or move on. My dad asked if he could take me to lunch and actually listened when I talked about the advocacy work. He told me he felt ashamed that he stayed silent during Adam's manipulation and wanted to do something real to help. 3 weeks later, he signed up to volunteer with a disability rights group that does community outreach and education programs. He started going to their meetings twice a month and helping organize events. Watching him put in actual work instead of just feeling bad about what happened meant something to me. My mom joined a support group for families dealing with manipulation and abuse. She stopped making excuses for how things went down at those family dinners. They both made it clear they believed me and supported what I was doing to hold Adam accountable. The relationship wasn't fixed completely, but it was getting better in ways that felt real. Luna reached out about building something bigger than just our small group of victims sharing information. She knew someone who could help us create a real website with resources and information about predatory behavior in activist spaces. We spent 2 months putting together articles about warning signs and red flags when people use social justice language to control or exploit others. We included information about what to do if you recognize these patterns and how to support victims. Luna helped us set up social media accounts connected to the site so people could find the resources easily. Within the first week, we got messages from people all over the country saying they'd experienced similar situations with manipulators hiding behind progressive causes. Dozens of people shared stories about partners or community members who weaponized activism language to justify abuse or harassment. Reading through those messages made me realize how common this pattern was, and how much people needed this kind of education and support. 6 months after Adam got arrested, I received an email inviting me to speak on a panel at a disability rights conference. The panel topic was online harassment and predatory behavior targeting disabled people. I felt nervous about speaking publicly, but Sage encouraged me to do it. She said our story could help other people recognize dangerous patterns before things escalated. I agreed and spent weeks preparing what I wanted to say. The conference was huge, with hundreds of people attending sessions about disability advocacy and rights. When I walked onto the panel stage, my hands were shaking, but I focused on why I was there. I told the audience about discovering Adam's Instagram comments and fake charity. I explained how he used disability rights rhetoric to manipulate my family and cover his predatory behavior toward disabled women. I emphasized that we need to believe victims even when perpetrators use progressive language and seem like allies. Several people came up to me afterwards saying they'd experienced similar manipulation or knew someone who had. One woman told me she'd been harassed by someone in her disability advocacy group and felt like nobody would believe her because he seemed so committed to the cause. Adam got released from jail after serving 13 months of his 18-month sentence. His lawyer got him out early for good behavior, even though that felt like a joke given everything he'd done. The release conditions were strict, though. He had to complete 5 years of probation with internet monitoring software on all his devices. He was required to attend therapy sessions twice a week and comply with all the restraining orders from the civil cases. He couldn't contact any of his victims or go within 500 feet of them. He moved 2 hours away to live with his parents in their house. Sage texted me when she found out about his release, and I could tell she was scared even with the restraining order in place. I felt angry that he was out walking around after everything he'd done to so many women. The system gave him back his freedom while his victims still dealt with the trauma he caused. Brooklyn suggested our advocacy group create a legal guide explaining civil options for harassment victims. She said a lot of people don't know they can pursue civil cases, even without criminal convictions. We worked together for 6 weeks putting together a detailed guide that explained restraining orders, civil lawsuits for harassment, and how to document evidence properly. Brooklyn wrote most of the legal content in plain language that regular people could understand. We published it as a free download on our website. Within the first month, over 5,000 people downloaded the guide. We started getting requests to translate it into Spanish and other languages. Several victim advocacy organizations asked if they could share it with their clients. Seeing the guide help so many people felt like we were turning something terrible into actual positive change. Scarlett texted me asking if we could have dinner together without our parents or lawyers present. Just the two of us talking honestly about everything that happened. I agreed to meet her at a quiet restaurant near my apartment. When I arrived, she was already sitting at a table looking nervous. We ordered food, and then she apologized again for supporting Adam's manipulation and not believing me about the tattoo situation. She told me she'd been doing a lot of therapy work to understand how she got pulled into his control. Then she shared that she'd enrolled in a victim advocate training program. She wanted to help other people recognize the warning signs she missed in her own relationship. She said learning about coercive control and manipulation tactics in her classes made her realize how many red flags she'd ignored with Adam. Hearing her talk about the training program and her genuine commitment to helping others made me feel like maybe we could rebuild our relationship eventually. It wouldn't be the same as before, but it could be something real based on honesty, instead of pretending everything was fine. Detective Carter called me 3 weeks after that dinner with Scarlett. He said the fraud investigation had uncovered something bigger than we originally knew. When they dug deeper into Adam's financial records and online activity, they found evidence he'd been running similar charity scams under different names for at least 3 years. He'd created multiple fake disability-related causes with professional-looking websites and donation pages. The total amount he stole across all the different scams was over $90,000. Most of the money came from disabled people and their families who thought they were supporting legitimate causes. Detective Carter sounded disgusted as he explained how Adam had systematically exploited the very community he claimed to care about. He said they were building a case for additional fraud charges based on this new evidence. The prosecutor filed additional fraud charges against Adam 2 months later. The charges covered the expanded investigation showing his pattern of creating fake charities over multiple years. His probation officer also filed paperwork to revoke his probation completely. The filing argued that the new evidence proved Adam was a continued danger to the community and hadn't taken any genuine accountability for his actions. Even though he'd been complying with his probation terms on the surface, the fact that he'd been running these scams for years before getting caught showed he was fundamentally dishonest and predatory. The probation revocation hearing got scheduled for 6 weeks out. Brooklyn told me I might be asked to testify about the ongoing impact of Adam's crimes and his behavior since getting released. I testified at the probation revocation hearing on a cold morning in November. The courtroom felt tense as I walked to the witness stand. I described the ongoing impact of Adam's crimes on me and the other victims. I explained how we'd discovered through our advocacy work that he was still trying to monitor victims through anonymous social media accounts, even with the internet restrictions. I told the judge about messages we'd received from people who recognized his patterns and fake profiles following them online. The prosecutor showed evidence of these anonymous accounts and how they connected back to Adam through IP addresses and login patterns. Adam's lawyer tried to argue the evidence was circumstantial, but the pattern was too clear to deny. After hearing all the testimony, the judge revoked Adam's probation completely. He sentenced Adam to an additional 2 years in prison for the new fraud charges. The judge said directly that Adam had shown he couldn't be trusted in the community and needed to serve real time for the full scope of his criminal behavior. Our advocacy group expanded the website to include training materials for disability organizations about vetting volunteers and identifying predatory behavior patterns. We created detailed screening protocols and red flag checklists that organizations could use when bringing new people into their programs. The materials explained how to conduct background checks, verify references properly, and create safe reporting systems for concerning behavior. 3 major disability rights nonprofits reached out asking us to train their staff on recognizing and preventing predatory behavior. We scheduled training sessions where we walked through case studies and helped organizations develop their own safety policies. Seeing legitimate disability advocacy groups take this issue seriously and implement real protections felt like meaningful progress coming from such an awful situation. Sage called me 2 weeks later to tell me she was starting a podcast about predators who hide behind progressive activism. She wanted to interview victims and create a space where people could share stories that usually were ignored or dismissed because the perpetrator used the right language and claimed to care about social justice. I agreed to be her first guest, and we spent 3 hours recording my experience with Adam, walking through how he weaponized disability rights rhetoric to manipulate my family and cover his predatory behavior. She edited it down to 90 minutes and launched the episode on a Tuesday morning. By that afternoon, the download counter showed 15,000 plays. By Friday, it hit 50,000. News outlets started picking up the story and reaching out for interviews. A disability rights magazine wrote an article about the podcast and the broader issue of predators infiltrating advocacy spaces. Sage's podcast gave us something the criminal case never could: a public platform where the full pattern of Adam's behavior got documented and discussed openly. My mom called me on a Sunday afternoon asking if I could come to dinner the following weekend. She said she wanted to have extended family over, and there was something important she and my dad needed to do. I showed up the next Saturday to find my aunts, uncles, and cousins already sitting around the expanded dining room table. My parents stood up together once everyone had food. My dad cleared his throat and looked directly at me. He said they needed to apologize publicly for their silence during Adam's manipulation, for not supporting me when he attacked me over my tattoo, and for prioritizing family peace over truth and protecting me. My mom's voice shook as she explained how ashamed they were of letting Adam control family dynamics through his fake activism, and how they should have questioned his behavior from the start, instead of just staying quiet. After they sat down, my aunt came over and hugged me, whispering that she always thought Adam was controlling but didn't know how to speak up without causing drama. 2 of my cousins said the same thing separately throughout dinner. They'd all noticed Adam's weird intensity and how he used social justice language to shut down any disagreement, but nobody wanted to be the one to challenge him and get labeled as problematic or insensitive. The dinner felt heavy, but also like something important was shifting in how my family functioned. June stayed after everyone else left, and we ended up talking for hours in my parents' living room. She told me about her own experience with family dysfunction and how hard it was to figure out who to trust when the people closest to you enable bad behavior. We bonded over the weird guilt that comes with being the person who disrupts family peace by telling the truth, even when you're objectively right and protecting people. She helped me work through my complicated feelings about Scarlett, acknowledging that my sister's remorse seemed genuine, while also validating that her initial support of Adam had caused real damage that couldn't just be erased with apologies. June became someone I could text when I needed to vent about family stuff without worrying about being judged or told to just get over it. Brooklyn sent me a detailed email breaking down Adam's total prison time after all the charges and sentences got calculated together. With the original 18 months and the additional 2 years for the expanded fraud charges, he would serve at least 3 years and 2 months before becoming eligible for parole. She explained that this was actually more accountability than most online harassment cases ever achieve, especially ones where the perpetrator used progressive language and seemed like a good person on the surface. The legal system had real limits in addressing predatory behavior that didn't involve physical contact, and while 3 years felt insufficient given everything Adam had done, it was more than many victims ever got. I appreciated her realistic perspective, even though part of me wanted him locked up for decades. The first civil judgment payment came through in March, almost a year after Adam's initial arrest. The court had ordered his assets liquidated to pay the victims, starting with his car, his electronics, and eventually forcing the sale of some investment accounts his parents had set up for him. Sage got her $45,000 settlement, and immediately put $30,000 of it toward expanding our advocacy work. She created a small grant program for other victims who wanted to pursue civil cases but couldn't afford the upfront legal costs. The grants covered filing fees, court costs, and initial attorney consultations, removing some of the financial barriers that kept people from seeking justice through civil courts when criminal cases fell short. A journalist named Noah emailed me in April asking if I would be willing to be interviewed for a book he was writing about online predators who use social justice language as protective cover. He'd been researching the phenomenon for 2 years and kept finding the same patterns: predatory people infiltrating progressive spaces and using the right vocabulary to deflect accountability when their behavior got questioned. I talked to Brooklyn about whether participating was a good idea, and she thought it could be valuable for creating public education and documentation. I agreed to the interview along with Sage and 2 other victims. We each spent several hours talking to Noah about our experiences, the warning signs we missed, and the tactics Adam used to manipulate people who genuinely cared about social justice issues. Scarlett finished her victim advocate training program in May and got hired by a local nonprofit that supported survivors of manipulation and coercive control. She called to tell me about the job and explained that understanding what Adam had done to her, how he'd twisted her values and isolated her from family, helped her recognize similar patterns in the people she now worked with. She could spot the red flags of someone being manipulated by a partner or family member because she'd lived through it herself. Her voice sounded different from it had a year ago, more grounded and less defensive. I was genuinely happy for her even though our relationship still felt fragile and complicated. Our advocacy website got a message in June from a woman who said she recognized warning signs from our materials in someone at her disability support group. The person had started following several members on social media, leaving comments that seemed supportive but had an uncomfortable undertone, and asking invasive questions about people's disabilities while framing it as allyship and wanting to learn. She reported the behavior to the group leadership with specific examples, and they investigated and found the person had been doing the same thing in 2 other disability organizations. He got removed from all 3 groups before any serious harassment happened. Reading that message felt like proof that our work was actually preventing harm, instead of just responding to it after the fact. Luna organized a gathering in July for everyone who'd been involved in exposing Adam and supporting the victims. We met at a community center and celebrated the civil trial victories, the additional criminal charges that led to real prison time, and the advocacy work that had grown from this nightmare. The mood was cautiously hopeful rather than triumphant, because we all knew the limitations of what we'd accomplished. Adam was in prison, but he'd eventually get out. The harassment had been documented, but not all victims got justice. The advocacy work was reaching people, but predatory behavior still happened every day in progressive spaces. Still, we'd done something meaningful and created resources that didn't exist before. My relationship with my parents reached a new kind of stability by late summer. It wasn't the same as before Adam's manipulation had fractured our family, but it was built on honesty about their failure to support me and their ongoing efforts to do better. We started having dinner together every Wednesday, and they actively participated in the advocacy work, helping with website updates and attending training sessions we organized. My dad volunteered with a legitimate disability rights organization to try making amends by actually supporting the community Adam had exploited. My mom joined Scarlett in therapy to work through the family dynamics that had let Adam's manipulation go unchallenged for so long. The relationship felt more real than it had before, less about maintaining appearances, and more about genuine connection and accountability. I decided to get another tattoo in September, this time a phoenix on the same arm right above Ambipom's paw print. The tattoo artist did amazing work with the colors, making the phoenix look like it was rising up from the paw print itself. When people asked about the combination at work or the grocery store, I explained that it showed something beautiful getting attacked and then coming back stronger. That felt like the exact truth of what I'd been through with Adam's manipulation and everything that came after. The phoenix wasn't some deep philosophical statement. It was just what happened to me in real life. Adam's parents sent a letter through their attorney in October, offering to contribute $20,000 to our victim advocacy fund. The letter talked about their family's accountability and wanting to support the work we were doing. I called a meeting with Sage, Luna, and the other victims to discuss whether we should accept it. We spent 2 hours going back and forth about it. Sage pointed out that the money could help a lot of people, and we shouldn't let our feelings about Adam's parents get in the way of that. Luna agreed, but said we needed to be clear that a donation didn't erase years of them enabling Adam's behavior and ignoring warning signs. We voted to accept the money, but I drafted a response making it crystal clear that their contribution didn't absolve them of anything. The attorney confirmed they understood, and the check arrived 3 weeks later. Brooklyn called me in November with an opportunity that made my stomach flip. She wanted me to co-teach a law school seminar about civil remedies for online harassment at the university where she sometimes lectured. I felt nervous about standing in front of law students and talking about my experience, but also excited to help future lawyers understand why creative legal strategies matter when criminal justice fails victims. We planned the seminar for January, and Brooklyn sent me reading materials to prepare. I practiced my sections in front of my bathroom mirror about 15 times before the actual date. Sage's podcast hit 100,000 downloads in December and got picked up by a major network that wanted to expand the show's reach. She called me screaming with excitement, and I could hear her jumping around her apartment. The network gave her a budget to interview experts about predatory behavior patterns, legal remedies, and prevention strategies. She started recording episodes with psychologists, attorneys, and law enforcement people who specialized in online crimes. 3 other victims from our group started their own advocacy projects after seeing what Sage built. One created an Instagram account sharing educational content about manipulation tactics. Another started a YouTube channel interviewing survivors. The ripple effect of our work kept growing in ways I never imagined when I first discovered Adam's Instagram comments. 1 year after Adam's arrest, our advocacy group organized a conference bringing together victims, attorneys, disability rights activists, and law enforcement. We rented a community center and promoted it through our website and social media. Over 300 people registered and showed up on the day. I gave a presentation about recognizing predatory behavior disguised as activism. Brooklyn led a workshop on civil legal remedies. Sage moderated a panel discussion with law enforcement about improving responses to online harassment. We established 4 ongoing working groups focused on prevention, legal advocacy, victim support, and education. The energy in that room felt powerful and hopeful in a way that made all the hard work worth it. I met someone at the conference who'd exposed predatory behavior in their own community, a guy who'd discovered his former roommate was catfishing vulnerable people online. We started talking during the lunch break and ended up exchanging numbers. Our first few conversations were mostly about advocacy work and legal strategies, but gradually shifted into more personal territory. We understood each other's wariness about trusting people and the complicated healing process after exposing someone close to you. The relationship developed slowly over months of coffee meetups and long phone calls. There was no pressure or rushing, just 2 people who got what the other had been through and wanted to build something genuine and safe. Scarlett called me in March sounding happier than I'd heard her in years. She'd gotten engaged to someone she met through her victim advocacy work, a therapist who specialized in trauma recovery. They'd been dating for 8 months, and he proposed during a weekend trip to the mountains. She asked if I would be her maid of honor, then immediately added that she knew she didn't deserve my forgiveness, but hoped we could keep rebuilding our relationship. I said yes without hesitation. Our relationship still had complicated layers, and probably always would, but she'd done real work to understand how Adam manipulated her and to make genuine amends. Being her maid of honor felt like acknowledging that people can change and relationships can heal even after serious damage. Detective Carter sent me an update about Adam's prison record in April. Adam had completed 2 years of his additional sentence, and his earliest possible release date was still 14 months away. The records showed he'd been written up multiple times for rules violations, including contraband possession and fighting with other inmates. He hadn't successfully completed the required treatment programs for his behavior, which would likely delay his release even further. The prison system wasn't perfect, and Adam would eventually get out, but at least he was facing real consequences and couldn't access potential victims while locked up. Our advocacy organization became a registered nonprofit in May, with grant funding to expand our work nationally. I joined the board of directors while keeping my day job, finding genuine purpose in turning my nightmare experience into systematic change that helped other people. We hired 2 part-time staff members to manage the website and coordinate with victims reaching out for support. The grants let us create more educational materials, host regional workshops, and develop partnerships with established disability rights organizations. The work felt meaningful in ways my regular job never had. The journalist's book came out in June and included a whole chapter about Adam's case as an example of predatory behavior disguised as activism. She interviewed me, Sage, and several other victims for the research. The book became required reading in several social work and nonprofit management programs across the country, spreading awareness to people who work in vulnerable communities. I bought 10 copies and sent them to disability organizations, law schools, and victim advocacy groups. Seeing Adam's predatory pattern documented in an academic context felt like creating a permanent record that would outlast all of us and maybe prevent future harm. Scarlett's wedding happened on a Saturday in September, held in a small garden venue with maybe 40 people total. She kept the guest list tight, just family and close friends who actually mattered to her now. The ceremony was simple and honest, nothing fancy or performative. When she said her vows, she talked about choosing honesty over comfort and accountability over convenience, and my mom started crying into my dad's shoulder. My dad had tears running down his face too, which I'd only seen maybe twice in my entire life. After they were pronounced married, everyone moved to the reception area for dinner. I stood up to give my maid of honor toast and kept it short. I talked about how second chances aren't free. They're earned through hard work and genuine change. I said that rebuilding trust is slow and difficult, but worth it when both people are willing to do the work. I meant every single word. Scarlett hugged me afterwards and whispered thank you, and I hugged her back without any of the anger I used to feel. Our relationship would never be exactly what it was before Adam, but it was real now in a way it hadn't been back then. 2 years after I got my ambipom tattoo, I was sitting at a coffee shop working on new advocacy materials for our website when someone at the next table leaned over. They pointed at my arm where both tattoos were visible and asked what the paw print meant. I told them the whole story, starting with the absurd accusation at family dinner and moving through the investigation, the predatory behavior we exposed, the legal battles, and the advocacy community we built from all of it. They listened carefully, nodding at certain parts. And when I finished, they said their friend was dealing with something similar, someone using progressive language to manipulate and control. I pulled out my phone and shared our website, our resource guides, and the contact information for the victim advocates we worked with. I watched them save everything and text it to their friend right there. This is what justice looks like now. Not perfect or complete, but real and growing and helping people every single day.